Hello there, welcome to tonight's episode. My name is Tom, I'm your host. Thanks for joining us on our weekly live stream where we monitor the state of Australia's EV adoption both internally, where we compare the progress between the states and territories, as well as externally by comparing ourselves with the rest of the world. Each week we chat to special guests from the EV and renewable space. Hello, if you're watching this live, feel free to leave a comment in the live chat if you're a channel subscriber. A warm welcome to if you're watching this on replay. And also, of course, if you are watching or if you're listening to us on podcast, special welcome as well. As you may all know, we'll be distributing the audio from our live streams from now on to all your favorite podcast directories. So that's myself putting on our podcast in this beautiful Genesis GV60, which we had on loan recently. So send us a photo of where you're watching from or listening to us on our live streams or podcast. We'll stick it on the next live stream. All right, let's get on our regular guests for tonight. So let's welcome to the stream, of course, Rahul and Riz. So let's get them on right now. Hello, gents. How are we?
Hey, Tom. Hey, Rahul. Good to be here.
Good evening, Tom and Riz. What a great episode you've got lined up for this evening. Just in time for Christmas coming up. I feel like this is our Christmas present for the Australian audiences, a bit of an intro to the main event in March.
Absolutely, yeah. It's an absolutely special episode indeed, so we'll certainly get to that very shortly. All right, so I just want to do a quick shout out to our members and also our people watching tonight. If you're a member, thank you so much for your support. I want to shout out to a special member, actually, Dr. Andrew Melville Smith, who is a vet from Whyalla Veterinary Clinic. Now, he writes to me, "We found your test drives and product reviews most useful since we are in a remote South Australian country town 500 kilometres from Adelaide and have no opportunities to do so locally. Your channel is very useful to coordinate our purchase of the Model Y, as we were able to order the second Tesla, and that opened the doors as soon as they opened their doors on the website. The Model Y seen in the picture there, the first one, goes to Adelaide twice a month, a distance approaching 500 kilometres, stopping for 30 minutes in Clare. To supercharge, there are 4 stalls in a paddock. It's so much more comfortable and relaxing compared to driving a petrol car. The BYD Atto 3s, you see the next 2 cars there are on the road 7 days a week, doing pickups and drop-offs and have been performing really well. The last 2 months, they handle the country trips to outlying towns with ease, as they rarely exceed 200-kilometre round trips and save a lot of money. We've been surprised how quickly the nurses have adapted to managing and driving EVs. They love the cars, and pickups and deliveries of the pets have turned from a chore in a petrol car to a sought-after job in the Atto 3. They've been taking it in turns to take the Atto 3s home at night to take family and friends for a drive in an EV, showing off all the tech, especially the sound and light show." That's really comforting to know that our channel has such a reach to people around Australia and around the world too. So thank you, Dr. Melville Smith, for sending that in. So I really appreciate that. Indeed. So there's the picture of, I'll just show you everyone, of them charging in Clare in South Australia in a paddock, as Andrew says. So lovely. I want to thank tonight's live stream partners, Joel, Hansho, and EVSC. They have the coupon codes there for discounts, so check them out. I'll leave them in the video description as well, of course. I normally do an accessory of the week, but this week I just actually want to do a public service announcement. Now, we did a installation of a Model 3Y rear screen recently. I was quite impressed with the product itself, but unfortunately, just a warning, if you're going to buy this product, it actually interferes with the Tesla software update, so be really careful with anything you plug into the car's brain. So that was a bit worrying. We did uninstall it, and it's working fine again for that car, so public service announcement there. All right, so coming up on tonight's show, of course, the main event, we've got an interview with Robert Llewellyn. And then we're going to go through our regular segments such as DC charging news, government incentives, EV charging eye candy, and of course Tesla, BYD, and other EV news. All right, well, coming up, it's my great honor to introduce our guest tonight, none other than Mr. Robert Llewellyn, arguably one of the world's leading advocates of electric vehicles and the use of renewable energy power to power our planet. Reading from his Wikipedia page, it says Robert Llewellyn is a British actor, comedian, presenter, and writer, He plays the mechanoid Crichton in the sci-fi television sitcom Red Dwarf, and formerly presented the engineering game show Scrap Heap Challenge. He has also founded and hosts a YouTube series, Fully Charged. I want you all to make a very warm welcome to Mr. Robert Llewellyn from Fully Charged. Hello, Robert.
Hello. Hi. Very nice to join you. Thank you so much for inviting me.
No, it's our absolute pleasure, Robert. Thank you so much for being our guest tonight. So, Robert, I just want to just allow me, if you wouldn't mind allowing me for one moment to put on my Crichton fanboy cap and say that I spent many hours watching reruns of Red Dwarf throughout my time at university in the early 2000s on the ABC here in Australia. I hadn't realized that Red Dwarf actually ran for 11 seasons in the 90s. That's almost unheard of these days.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you think the last ones we made, we just finished the last series that we've ever made just before lockdown. So in 2020, in February 2020, we did the last season. So we were still doing it by then. So I mean, very, very old cast, looking a little battered and worn. So yeah, I mean, in fact, we've worked on it off and on. Obviously, we had lots of gaps, but for I think it was 33 years or something around that, which is crazy. That never happens in TV. It's just crazy. But I mean, we did have there was a 9-year gap when it became a show I used to make. And then suddenly we started making it again, which was very unexpected and a great delight. So, I mean, they're very good friends, the rest of the cast. I mean, we do get on very well. So it's a huge privilege to be involved in it.
Yeah, certainly that comes across on screen. You guys just gelled so well, in front of the camera there. I read the books as well, so seeing your character Crichton come on, personified on TV was just magic to me. So I'm very honoured to have you here with us. And I didn't realise Crichton actually only appeared in the 3rd season of Red Dwarf. Yeah. And in your Wikipedia page, it says you were discovered as a result of your appearance at the Edinburgh Festival, performing in your one-man comedy Mammon, Robot Born of Woman.
It was actually it was a two-hander. It was a two-hander. Yes, it was the woman who created the robot was the main character in it, but I played the robot, and so there were some aspects of Crichton, I guess, buried in there somewhere. I mean, that was long before I knew anything about Red Dwarf, and the producer of Red Dwarf at the time came to see the show, and that's how it kind of started for me.
Yep.
Yeah.
And just reading the page again, it says that the robot begins to behave more human, starts to behave increasingly badly. I mean, a robot becoming more human, that's very sort of pertinent to what we're watching now with the Tesla Optimus bot.
Yeah.
Reality's becoming closer, right?
It is. I mean, the whole thing. I mean, that play was originally inspired by RoboCop. Where I saw bizarrely, my first ever trip to America, I was staying with friends in Los Angeles who were special effects designers that I'd known in the UK, and they worked on RoboCop's leg. And I don't know if you remember the RoboCop movie, but there's a point where his leg opens, he's got a huge gun inside his robot leg. And they built the opening doors of his leg with the gun coming out. So we went to this premiere, and it was I'd never been to anything like it. Man's Chinese Theatre in the middle of Los Angeles, and it was with the red carpet and all that. And I didn't know who any of the people were in it, but there were, and that was the idea of a robot. I then came up with this idea of a robot that wasn't designed to kill people or shoot people. It was designed to make money on the stock market. And at that time, it was the time of huge expansion in the London Stock Exchange and the City of London financial district and all that stuff. It was boom time for that. So there was this term which some of your viewers and listeners may remember, the yuppie, young urban professional. So he was a robo yuppie. That was the idea. So it was very silly. It was quite light. He did, unfortunately, sort of copulate with a desk when his control systems got a bit out of hand, and it was just a cheap joke, but it got lots of laughs.
I'm old enough to remember the term yuppie, so thanks. I mean, obviously, Crichton is based on the book character. I mean, where did you draw your inspiration from for that character?
Oh, well, I mean, it took actually, what was weird was very subconscious, because I grew up watching a show called The Munsters, and one of my favorite ever characters as a kid was Herman Munster, who was a kind of it was basically the Frankenstein monster, except he was really gentle and sweet and loving, and he wasn't a frightening monster. And I guess that's where it came from. But it took me, I think I'd been doing it for a couple of years, and I suddenly went, oh, this is Herman Munster. That's where it had come from, sort of inside somewhere, the buried Herman Munster. So that was, I would think, a fairly big influence on the character, because the way that the writers created Crichton. I mean, he was a gentle robot. He wasn't a kind of fighting machine robot. He was good at cleaning toilets and doing laundry. That was his role in life, and he took it very seriously. So, I mean, a lot of that, that's the writers. It's Rob Grant and Doug Naylor originally that wrote all those things, and they gradually, as it happened with all of us over the years of doing it, they got to know us very well, and they started to work in our actual lives and what we actually were interested in and doing. And they know that I love doing ironing. I still like to. My wife has never, we've been together 35 years, she has never touched an iron. She doesn't know what that is. I do all the ironing, and I enjoy it. I'll do a bit of ironing in front of the TV. But so they built that in, and then Craig does eat curries that honestly, if you spilt some on a bonnet of a car, it would strip the paint off. I mean, really brutal stuff. I mean, stuff where in an Indian restaurant I've been with him, the owner of the restaurant warned him. So, are you sure? So if you've got a curry that's that hot, and he loves it. And Danny John Jules has got more clothes than you can ever imagine any human being needs. And Chris Barry does collect quite bizarre things. I mean, he's got some amazing classic cars, but he has got some quite odd, like Victorian soda bottles. And you go, oh, it's nice. Well done. Yeah, so we're all a bit like our characters, basically, unfortunately.
I was going to say, it sounds like you just played yourselves, which is why it works so well.
Yes. I think there's an element of that in it, certainly. Yeah.
Well, now that you mentioned the Munsters, I can see the inspiration now. So that's good to know.
Yes, if people don't know the Munsters, if you look it up, I mean, you've got to sort of see his activity, because obviously he doesn't look like Crichton, but it is the way he moves in a way. And it's often dictated by the costume. I mean, a lot of the movements that I did with Crichton, I moved like that because I couldn't move in any other way. The costume is very restrictive, incredibly hot, quite heavy. It kept me fit doing that show. You had to be fit to do it.
Hours in the makeup chair.
A lot of hours in the makeup chair. Yeah.
Well, speaking of inspirations, I mean, you've actually personally inspired me to continue my own journey with EVs and renewable energy. When I first started my YouTube channel 4 years ago, I was very encouraged to see yourself as a prominent figure in this space, which you still continue to be. Someone I deeply respected as an actor, and now as a spokesperson for EVs. I just want to go back in time and explore the early beginnings of Fully Charged, which, by the way, is on the verge of 1 million subscribers for those who don't know. Yeah. So congratulations, Robert.
Thank you. No, it hasn't been an overnight success. I think it's fair to say. It's taken 12 years.
Yeah.
But it's been this year has been extraordinary. We went through, as everyone did, a real rough patch. 2020, 21. We thought we were going to go under we thought we were going to have to let people get all that stuff. We managed just to scrape through with a little bit of intervention from me to keep the company afloat. But this year has been extraordinary. So the view counts and the subscribers has been really rewarding this year. It's been really nice to see that happen. And I think the general interest, and I think this applies across the board, the general interest in the topic is a really big driver of that. There's a lot more interest in it. But yeah, it's a journey that is hard to kind of do in a sentence, because it was like a 20-year journey. So another TV show that I did for many years, Scrap Heap Challenge, which I think was shown briefly in Australia on a cable channel or something. I know it has been shown there. I can't remember what it was on, but that was an engineering challenge show that I made in the UK, and we made an American version. So there was Junkyard Wars in America and Scrap Heap Challenge in the UK, exactly the same show format, so the same format. And that from 2001 to 6, we made Junkyard Wars in America. And I spent a lot of time in USA, particularly in California, and also particularly coming into contact with lots and lots of engineers in America. And that is kind of where I think the seed was planted of what eventually became the Fully Charged show. And it was really critically important things like the Prius, was a vitally, when I first went in a Prius. I mean, when the person who was driving, young woman who was driving, it said it's a hybrid. It meant nothing. I mean, it's so weird to look back now, but a hybrid. For example, my a family were farmers on my father's side, and a hybrid apple tree, which is where I'd heard the term, is you cut off the stock root of one apple tree and you graft on a different breed of apple tree, and it grows. I've got one in my garden, which has got this lump at the bottom of it. It's a really old tree. And that grows. And so I'd heard hybrid to do with apple trees. I'd never heard it in relation to anything else. So I was going, what's it got apple trees in it? What are you talking about? And then it drove, she pulled up, we were driving back to my apartment. This is very legitimate. This is a researcher on the show because it's sounding dodgy already. There were other people there, but she was giving me a lift back to my apartment in Los Angeles on Sunset Boulevard, traffic lights. This is when this conversation happened. Red light. Light changes, car moves off, no noise, nothing. It felt like it was being towed by an invisible wire. And that was my first experience of a hybrid. That would have been 2001. And we didn't have them in the UK at that time. They weren't here. And I was fascinated. I was going, why would you bother? Why would you go to all that trouble of building an electric motor joined to a petrol engine to make the car? Why, absolutely made no sense. And it was a real slow process of starting to understand, particularly in Los Angeles, in the 80s and 90s, the levels of pollution in the air pollution were catastrophic. I mean, really seriously damaging the population. And so there was all that legislation that went through in those times, which is where really hybrid and electric vehicle technology was kind of seeded. That's where it started to happen. And it was, we were filming monster trucks, which the teams on Scrap Heap Challenge made. So the absolute antithesis of a fuel efficient, environmentally aware vehicle. One of the biggest of the monster trucks they built did 1 mile a gallon. That was its fuel efficiency. But while we were filming that, there was a team of engineers on a drag strip next to where we were filming. It's nothing to do with us, and I just happened to be there. They were key. They were fans of the show. And so one of them came over and said, do you want to ride in this car? And I can't, at that time, my entire professional life was going in weird machines, big diggers, massive earth movers, tunneling machines, weird trains, so the prospect of having a ride in a car on a really hot day in California with a flame-proof suit, neck brace, full face helmet, 5-point harness, very, very small, cramped little kind of kit car. And I was going, oh God, this is really, I just want to have my lunch in the shade, And this car it was called the T0. I think it no longer exists now. It was actually burnt in a fire, accidentally a few years ago. But it was this little yellow kind of kit car I didn't know what it was. And I sat in this car, absolute silence, and suddenly it went down this drag strip so fast. The acceleration was ridiculous. And that was a very early experimental electric car with actual, I think they were Sanyo laptop battery packs refitted in a wooden box in the back, beautifully wired together. So it wasn't like we did on Scrap Heap. It was very nicely done. But it was testing out the drivetrain. So it was a company called AC Propulsion, which went on to make the drivetrains for the early Tesla Roadsters. But at the time, I knew nothing about any of that. That was the weird thing. It was like years later, I went, oh, that's the thing that I went in. If I'd known at the time that this was effectively quite a historic vehicle, I'd have been much, but I was impressed, but I was as baffled as I was impressed. I just didn't understand why you would go to the effort of making an electric car that seriously, I didn't ask, but I would guess the range of that car was 2 or 3 miles. It wasn't designed to do a long way. It was all about the acceleration and the speed. So, it was like an experiment. It was like a science project. A university science project. It wasn't a kind of plausible alternative. And at the time, I think it was around that time, certainly in that visit, one of the sound engineers on Scrap Heap was trying to sell me a Mustang, a 1969 Ford Mustang in mint condition with a beautiful burbling V8. And I absolutely loved it. And I'm so glad I didn't buy it because I would have spent so much money maintaining it in the UK, and it would not have fitted into the road system here. But that's where my head was at. Was sitting in sitting the traffic lights in this car, bit the throttle, boom, the whole car would would pivot. It was a terrible to go around corners. Brilliant in a straight line. That car to go around a corner was horrendous. But so there was a long journey ahead to do that. But I think by 2009-10, around then, I had an electric car here. I'd had Priuses and been through the Prius journey, and I then went, "Oh, this stuff works now. I kind of get it." But it was still such early days. There was no charging infrastructure. There was no, everyone told you. Everyone, every motoring journalist, every pundit, every know-all told you they'll never work. You have to throw the batteries away after 2 weeks. If we all drove electric cars, we'd melt the grid. All those things. I think the torrent of that negativity was, in a way, fascinating because it's psychological, not technological. Those, it's like, oh my God, it's terrifying. And I don't quite understand why that's so scary. I've tried to understand it, and I think we've all moved on now. Even people who don't want electric cars kind of accept they work, even if they think they're, there's no, the term range anxiety has faded. I think, there was a time when that was the first thing you'd hear. Now the first thing I hear is they're too expensive, which I think is a very legitimate reason. They are very expensive. But anyway, sorry, I've rambled.
No, not at all. I think certainly in Australia that is starting to fade. I think now it's becoming sort of charger anxiety with reliability.
Yes, charger anxiety. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
No, we certainly have that. We have that still here because it's not the lack of chargers; it's the reliability of chargers. It's still an issue here. And
correct.
When you hit a charger that doesn't work, I am instantly going, I want a diesel. I hate electric cars and I hate the stupid people who make them. So it's very frustrating when they don't work. It's just, drives me crazy. But thankfully, we've really progressed. I mean, that's much less common now. They generally do work.
Oh, that's good to hear. Well, Dennis Pasquale's also in the chat here, and he says two left of the T0s. So there you go.
Oh, there are. Oh, thank you, Dennis. Because I know one was destroyed in a fire. I know that. Yeah. And I mean, the thing I need to say is I actually don't know. I'm guessing that this car I went in was a T0. I don't actually know because if they told me at the time, that was 2002, I think. I mean, it's when you get to my age, I can't remember where I left my keys. I need all the help I can get. So it was an electric car that was being developed around that time. It makes sense that it probably was that. And but whoever the people were that were doing it, I'd love to meet them again. I have no idea who they were. It was literally, it was probably the entire experience was probably 10 to 15 minutes. And then I had to go back and film stuff. So I didn't see them ever again or know what it was. It was just that weird electric car. But it looked, from memory, it looked like the pictures I've seen of the T0. So anyway, we'll never know.
Well, that clearly stuck in your mind for sure. We've got Terrence J saying Robert Llewellyn is a total champion. 3 exclamation points. Evie and Red Dwarf legend. 5 exclamation points.
5.
There you go.
That's very kind of you, Terrence. Thank you. Oh goodness me! Yes, I don't know. I don't think I am at all. I say often when I say that, you should, I want to say, ask my wife and children. They'll tell you. There's not a lot of legend.
Robert, I want to ask you, what have been some of the more memorable moments over the years on Fully Charged?
Oh goodness!
Probably more than you can count.
Yeah, there's a lot. There has been a lot. Well, I think the first time I drove, it was pre-Ludicrous mode. It was what was the version before Ludicrous? Or was it Ludicrous? Whatever I had, a high performance Model S. I can't remember which one it was. And it just freaked me out. It was the sub 3, when you get to around 3 seconds, 0 to 60, it was one of those. And it was on a road not far from where I live, very flat, straight road in Woodland. It's on YouTube. And I just lost the plot. Terrible. So there was a lot of bad language, which we beeped out. I just couldn't believe how fast that car was. It was utterly terrifying. And I got used to it. I had it for about a week. And at the time, I had a Model S, but it was a long range one. It was a 85, Model S 85. So, it was swift. I was used to that, but not to this extent. I mean, that thing was a monster. And I nearly vomited. I've never known, because I don't like fairground rides. I like watching people on fairground rides. I just don't want to go on them myself. So I think it doesn't suit my my equilibrium. I was dizzy. I was sweating. It was horrendous. So that was a memorable moment, not altogether good, but still the fact that you can build a machine that big. I mean, it's a big car, and it felt like you were in a safe kind of seat in a metal steel cage, and a truck drove up behind you at 60 miles an hour with a big metal bar, and it just went bang in the back of you. I mean, the acceleration is mind-boggling. It's just bonkers. So what the even fast? I haven't been in a what is the fastest Tesla at the moment? What is it? Ludicrous, or is it Plaid?
It's the Plaid.
The Plaid. I haven't been in the Plaid. Yes. Okay. I saw one when we were in San Diego recently, but I didn't get a chance to have a go in it. I was kind of terrified just even looking at it. So that's right. I've done Ludicrous, not Plaid. But then I think another one, which is very different, and in fact the exact opposite of incredibly fast acceleration, was driving from Copenhagen to Oslo a few years ago to a conference in Oslo. And we went on an electric ferry, and we planned it all, and we'd arranged with the ferry company. So we filmed on the ferry. It was fantastic. But I was talking to the captain on the bridge in this ferry, where there was a sort of background mechanical, like air conditioning, but no big noise and no vibration at all. This is a big ferry with like 20 trucks on it and 50 cars. It's not a little thing. And as I talked to him, I kind of felt suddenly dizzy, slightly thrown. I was worried if I'd had food poisoning. And it was because the ship was moving, but there had been no warning or no signal, no sound, no vibration, no jolt, nothing. It just was like you're sitting, it's like you're in a room and suddenly the whole room starts to slowly shift. And it was so I could see the sea behind him and ships and buildings go, suddenly moving. Like, it was absolutely remarkable how smooth that was. An electric, 100% electric ferry with like multiple megawatt hour batteries, and it charged I think 1.6 megawatts, and it was a charger with a cable that plugged into the side of the ship, but with a robot arm and a camera, so it could, because obviously ships go up and down, so it would measure where the socket was, and when you saw it go in, it was just chung. It was huge. I mean, the wires were like as thick as your thigh, huge. And that's 1.6 megawatts it charges at. So that was like extreme and big. And I think seeing things like huge wind turbines, we're filming wind turbine blade manufacturing soon. And that is, the scale of that kind of engineering, that stuff. I do love all that. I love a big factory. But other than that, I mean, I'm trying to think of, there's been hundreds of memorable things, but it's difficult to pick out anyone. Flying, I suppose the first flight, I flew this year in a very small electric aircraft, Pipistrel, which I know there's loads of in Australia. I know there's a flying school in Western Australia that uses them. But we flew on probably one of the windiest days this year, which was a bit challenging. Because as the fantastic pilot said, he teaches pilots. He's a pilot trainer. He did, when we landed and got out of the plane and everything was fine, he did come up to me and say quietly, we were flying in an aircraft at the very limit of its capabilities. I went, thank you for telling me that now. Yep. Not when we were in the air going, it was very, very violent. So that's on YouTube. You can see that. I don't swear. I managed not to swear in it. But there were one or two moments when it felt like it was just dropping like a stone. But it was slightly alarming.
I'm glad he told you that after the flight. That's very professional.
But I mean, it's an amazing thing. Absolutely amazing aircraft. And when it's 50 feet above the ground, you can't hear a thing. So on the ground, so it's very, particularly for flight training, because all they do is land, take off, fly around in a circle, land, take off. That's what they're doing all the time. And if you've got a combustion engine doing that and you live nearby, I've lived near one of those airports. Really annoying.
Question for you from Gaffer, one of our viewers and members. Right. It says, Bobby, what excites you more right now? EVs and e-mobility, or renewable power and grid transformation, or e-housing and home decarbonisation?
Wow, that is a very, very good, broad question, Gaffer. I think possibly because of the way we're structuring the shows we make, I'm doing less cars, although the most recent episode is me reviewing a car the aura funky cat. But I think I'm really fascinated by the challenges of the renewable power and grid modernization, the transformation of the grid, as you say, on sort of hand in hand with what's going on in homes. But the macro challenge, the sort of global challenge of how we stop burning fossil fuels, really, that's the kind of driving force. How we stop burning fossil fuels to it, and yet can live in reasonable, technologically advanced comfort is it's a huge challenge. And when you start to see the kind of real figures of how much fossil fuel we burn and how much energy that produces. I mean, we've been so blessed for the last 150 years to have access to this incredible energy source, and it has been cheap and readily available. And you've got to look at the positive sides of it as well as the negative. I mean, the negative sides of it are massive, And I just heard the history of Qatar today, the kind of political history of the last 100 years. And it's not a pretty picture, and the British don't come out of it glowing. I mean, we were really, and the first 20 years of oil and gas sort of exploitation in Qatar, the people of Qatar got diddly squit. They got nothing. They just lived in poverty while BP raked in trillions of dollars of profit. It's so brutal. The history of the oil industry is mind-boggling. So the shift away from that reliance is not going to happen in my lifetime. I'm too old to see it, but I think we are seeing the beginnings of a genuine a possibility that it can be achieved. And I think it's going to take 100 years. It's going to be a long, painful process, but I don't think it's going to stop. I think that's the critical thing, and much as there's plenty of people paid plenty of money to try and imply that it's renewables don't work and all those normal stuff we've been hearing for decades. There's enough evidence now, and enough economic evidence, I think, to push it forward. So that is kind of, certainly. I mean, I still love seeing new electric cars and finding out about what's going on, but I think that my focus has kind of slightly gone more on the other uses of the technology that electric cars have developed in a way, that it's definitely opened the door. And I've spoken to so many people about this, that they may never have really thought about, the environment and green issues and all those things. And then they get an electric car and they go, oh, all right. Because I never thought about where the petrol came from that I put in my petrol cars. And not only that, I mean, none of us did, I think, and that's perfectly excusable. But it wasn't excusable for me because I'd spent 2 days making a TV show in an oil refinery. And even then, this is like 25 years ago, even then, I didn't think when I got back in my petrol car, now I know where petrol comes from. Just never occurred to me.
Yep. And
the energy use to refine petrol, it's so, they have the fossil fuel industry has such a huge advantage because everything they do has become normal. And it's only when you realize that everything they do is also incredibly energy wasteful, incredibly toxic, massive damaging infrastructure they built. People who live near oil refineries are ill. It's just what happens. And yet that's normal. And no one complains about it. I mean, I do. You might. There might be 3 or 4 of us that do, but 99% of the population haven't got a clue, and you don't see it because it's not in your backyard, except for the poor people whose backyard it is in.
Correct. We'll just have to keep encouraging people to look this way. Yep.
Yes. So that is what electric cars really do, is they open that door. I used to say it was a really annoying. I just wanted to drive a car. Just leave me alone. But you get an electric car and you go, oh God, now I've got to think about all these other things. How annoying. I just want to go down the shop and get some pasta. Where does the electricity come from that you made the pasta? Oh, shut up.
I don't want to think about it.
Yeah, I don't want to think about it. I'm thinking about it too much.
Speaking of electric cars, actually, Andrew McLean asks, what is your favorite electric car right now?
So difficult, isn't it? I mean, I drive a Model 3. I've had it for about 4 years now. It is infuriating how good it is, and how good the charging infrastructure is, and it drives me bananas. I don't want it to be, and I now accept, because it's taken me years to learn this. So when I first went in a Tesla and people said, well, I don't think the build quality is up to, and I went, I don't even know what that means. I can open the door and I can shut it, and when I drive through a puddle, I don't get wet feet. So that was good enough for me. Now I can see, when I look at my Model 3, that it's kind of, and I compare it to Porsche Taycan, Audi, VW ID4, which we also have, I go, oh, I see. Yeah, this bodywork is really tight and accurate and fits together beautifully. And there's no gaps, and there's no fluctuation in the gaps. The gaps are absolutely spot on, and it's very, very solidly built. And the Tesla, there is something about a Tesla that's a bit flexible and wibbly wobbly at times, but the software is 10 years advance of anyone else's. It really is. It works. The updates, I've just had updates on the car. The car keeps changing, because some of the updates drive me mad. We had an update here, I don't know if you had that there, a few years ago, where there's a Roman road. So we're talking 2,000-year-old road that goes within 10 miles of our house. It's straight. It goes from Cirencester, a Roman town in the south, to Leicester, a Roman town in the north. And it's a straight line. And the Tesla sat-navs would just do, I'm going down that road, it's straight, and then I turn right and I get to my house. It was doing ridiculous loops off this road. And the joke here was the software had been updated to try and spell Elon. Every time you put a route in, it would if we make him go there. It was just utterly rubbish. But then a software update happened and it didn't do it anymore. And that is wonderful. It was a terrible update. But so I'm set now, favorite cars. I absolutely adored driving. I had a Porsche Taycan for a week. And it was just, because I know it's not as fast as Tesla can make cars, but it wasn't the speed, I think. It was the fact that I was in a low, stupidly big, ridiculous sports car that I know could go really fast, but I could get out of it without grunting. And that's the grunt test for me is really critical for a man my age. When I first got out of a Tesla when I first drove a Tesla Roadster a long way, I couldn't get out. I had to have young people help haul me out, needed a winch. And there was a lot of grunting.
It's not a bad thing having help out of the car from young people.
I know, I definitely had help on more than one occasion to get out of the damn thing. And then and the Taycan wasn't like that. And the speed it charged at. So we did test it out on a brand newly installed 350 kilowatt charger. And it didn't charge at 350 kilowatts, but it was 280. When you see that, when you plug it in and it goes and it starts charging, and you walk around the car and check the thing, and it's added 6 miles in the time it took you to, and then you look around and it's added 14, then it's added 25. I mean, that was amazing to see that for the first time. It was really impressive. But I mean, I don't know. I can't really say I've got a favorite. I don't know. I'm now obsessed with smaller, lighter, cheaper cars. That's what I think we desperately need. So the Aura Cat, the Aura Funky Cat, sorry, it's been renamed in the UK, from Great Wall Motors, is smaller and lighter, but is not cheaper, unless you buy it in China, in which case it's incredibly cheap. I mean, the markup between China and here, if you buy one in China, I don't know what it is. It's about £15,000 UK. Wow. And we're having to pay 30,000. So, I mean, I think let's all invest in car shipping, because that's you can really rake it in. So that is unfortunate. I mean, we have, I don't know if you've seen episodes that Elliot Richards has done, who lives in Shanghai. So he's driving cars that are like sub £5,000, brand new electric car. I mean, small city cars, but the fact that they exist and they can do like 110 miles or 150K is amazing. And we're just not, we're never going to get those at that cost, but that is some of the stuff that Renault is doing, which we'll see next year. We've seen it. I think we're not meant to talk about it that much, but they are making smaller, lighter, cheaper electric vehicles, and really interesting designs that kind of throw the old boring car shapes out the window and do something different, which is, they've always done that. Renault and Citroën have often come up with really crazy new shapes and technologies for long time.
Well, look,
but yeah, can't really say a favorite.
Well, look, we'd love to see a lot of these cars on Fully Charged Live, which I want to talk about a bit about now. You've obviously got an incredible team working alongside you. Let's go back to 2019 when Fully Charged Live first took place at Silverstone, famous Silverstone circuit.
2018, I think.
I'm sorry, 2018.
2018, yeah.
It attracted 6,000 attendees, and I believe by your own admission, it exceeded your expectations. What
By
was
a country mile, yeah.
What was your original vision of this event?
Well, it really wasn't my vision. So Dan Caesar, who is now the CEO of the Fully Charged Show Limited, and boy, am my wife keeps going, "You've been ousted in a boardroom coup," and I said, "No, I ran out screaming, let me go." I think you have to understand your talents and strengths is a critically important thing for mature people. And I know what my strength definitely isn't in management and running a company. I'm just terrible. And Dan is amazing at it. So, I met him, I can't remember how long ago, 8 or 9 years ago, when he hired me to chair a series of panel discussions about the energy market and the energy future with proper clever people and that was really good fun. And it was a big event with many hundreds of people attending, and it was in London. And then kind of years later, he said, "You should do a live show about electric cars for Fully Charged." I said, "No one," and I was so skeptical. I said, "No one's going to come to that. It's ridiculous. Where would you do it? I don't know." And that discussion went on for a long time. But I definitely said, "This is a nightmare." Like even 2 weeks before, "This is a nightmare. No one's going to come. We're going to lose money. I can't afford to pay for Silverstone. It's really expensive. Oh my God, there's no catering. It's all it was all of it overwhelmed me, and I just was in an absolute state. And on the first morning of the first day, we went to open the doors to let people in, and there was a ribbon, and we're going to cut the ribbon and all that. And it all felt, even then, I hadn't seen it. I was in the little dark room up the top, just like, "Oh God, what are we doing?" And I still wasn't confident. And then Dan whispered in my ear, "There's nearly 5,000 people outside the door waiting to get in. I think we'll be okay." And you go, "Oh my God." And I could not believe it then. It was just this absolute, torrent of people. It was a real thrill. And that year, the catering was done by Silverstone, who thought we were a little 2-bit thing. It's not going to, they have Formula One. That's what the building we were housed in is, where they have the Formula One races with hundreds of millions of pounds worth of sponsorship and big trucks and flags and helicopters. And we had sort of 6 electric cars and an electric bicycle and some enthusiasts, it was like they just were not interested. And then at about 11 o'clock in the morning, all the catering had run out, all the water, there was no tea, there was no coffee. And there was actually a trucks arrived and were like distributing food. It's like absolute pandemonium and chaos. So they did learn that year. So that's got better. But yes, no, it was definitely not my idea. But since we've done it, what is wonderful are the panel discussions, which are hugely popular and have amazing, because all the way through I was going, no one's going to want to watch, what's the future of the domestic boiler? Who's going to come and see that talk? It's ridiculous. Standing room only. You couldn't get in. It was jam-packed to the roof. So that you saw the enthusiasm and the fascination with it. And also, now, like the big show we do now at Farnborough International, which is a huge airfield, massive building, which we absolutely fill to the, it's absolutely jam-packed with exhibitors and displays and talks and, amazing stuff. So that was earlier this year, we just tipped 35,000 people attending over the weekend. So it was a very big event. And we had electric aircraft there, and we had trucks and buses and tractors and everything. It was incredible. And I don't remember how many, but I know it was thousands of test drives. So all the car manufacturers will have 20 or 30 of their cars there that you can book a test drive and go out for a test drive on the roads around the area. So and that was incredibly popular. And there were individual companies, like Hyundai and Tesla and Renault and VW. They would all be vying with each other as to how quickly they'd had all their test drives booked. And Hyundai, I think, had when they had the Ioniq 5 there for the first time, all their test drives were booked in like 10 minutes. And they were all strutting around going, 10 minutes, we're full. Yeah, baby.
Bragging rights.
So a lot of bragging rights. Yeah. So that was really good. And then we then did one in Austin, Texas in 2020, which of course was like we just got it in. And I think a couple of the people that were there, I think there wasn't a lot of the people who attended didn't get COVID, but there was definitely a couple of people of our team. We think now, we didn't know, but they had a sort of flu afterwards. Who knows, but and that was, I said, this is going, we don't know, the American market is totally different. Oh my God, this is going to, it was fine. It was sold out. And we've just done one in San Diego, which was even more people came. It's a real struggle there to get the car companies. They're very, very reluctant to be there. We had every make of electric car that is available in America on display. We managed to do that, which is basically the owners. So a friend of ours who's got a F-150 Lightning brought that down. And since then, Ford have heard, I think we might come to the next one. So that's how it's worked all the way through. You sort of show them that there is an audience, and then they come. But so Australia is, again, I'm always the nervous one about it. Going, will anyone in Australia come? We do have quite a large percentage of our YouTube audience is in Australia and New Zealand. So we're not totally unknown there, but it's still very much smaller than either here or United States. But I think it feels to me like there's been a real shift in Australia since I was last there. I mean, when I was last there, I drove a Model X, Tesla Model X, from Sydney to Brisbane. I was basically delivering it. Tesla wanted it taken there anyway, so that was very nice. I got to do that. And there were superchargers, but I could tell there wasn't a lot of the other infrastructure that we would have here at the time. But it feels like, well, I'll see when I come, but it feels like that has changed a bit, and there's a lot more electric vehicles around. There's a lot more interest in it, that. Yeah. And also the stories I follow in Australia about the penetration of domestic solar, of community batteries, of all that stuff is like, oh my God, because that's the I Spy game you could play now if you were driving around Australia. Is find me a house that would drive past that doesn't have solar panels. It's much harder to see. And that, I remember flying into Sydney in the late 80s for the first time. And there was all these red roofs and the odd swimming pool as you come into land in Sydney. And I did it the last time I flew into Sydney, which was, 5 years ago. There are lots of red roofs and a few swimming pools, but all the red roofs have got solar panels on. I mean, that change has been really very noticeable and has affected the market. I mean, in a sense, that's what I find fascinating, is at peak demand in the middle of the day in Australia is peak solar. And so that's going to really affect. Hang on, I'm trying not to do my really bad Australian accent, but I have been married to an Australian for 35 years.
Go on, please. Go ahead. We
want to offend your viewers and listeners. Well, I just think it's the coal industry. I'm impersonating a clean coal advocate. Mate, we used to burn coal and get bloody paid money. Now all these doofuses have got the bloody solar on the roofs. Jeez, no one wants our coal anymore. Ban solar.
Yeah, very good, very good.
Sorry, I shouldn't do that. I'm not allowed to do that in the kitchen.
That was surprisingly accurate. I liked it.
What's great is my daughter learnt to speak in Australia. I mean, she's very English. She's lived here all her life, but she was in Australia for a year when she was a little girl, tiny, preschool. She was at nursery. And when she came back to England, I didn't hear it when we were there. I was completely unaware of it. When she came back to England, I'd say, darling, can you tidy up your room? Or something like that. And she'd go, oh, no. It's really Australian. No. These words would come out where she and she can she speaks Australian, basically. It's natural for her. She can just turn it on. I mean, she's now lived there. She lived there for 2 or 3 years after uni, or before uni, after school. So she's spent a lot of time there. Same as my son, but my son doesn't bother to do accents.
I'd like to put this comment up from Peter V. It says, Robert and Tom, both your channels helped me make the decision to switch to an EV. So that's, for me, wow, you're putting me next to Robert here. So thank you, Peter.
There we go, Tom. No, you're the man over there. Well, and also, I mean, it is different in different countries. It's very easy to say, get an electric car here, and people go, what about the charging infrastructure? Oh, shut up. We did that years ago. But whereas in Australia, you could all say, well, yeah, if you want to drive from Sydney to Perth, it's doable, but it's a bit of a challenge.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Look, I'll put this comment up too from Sydney EV. Infrastructure in New South Wales has grown immensely in the last few years.
Very
and
good.
I agree, very much so. I've driven to Brisbane and Adelaide now. It's definitely improved a lot.
Right. Oh, I'm looking forward to.
Yep.
I'm looking forward to seeing it. Yeah. And also, I mean, it's things like for someone like me coming to Australia, we're going to struggle and we're determined not to have a car, and we can borrow grandma's car for a bit while we're there, and because we're staying in central Brisbane because where my wife's mother is in Brisbane, and so we don't need a car, I'm sure, when we're there most of the time. But then when we do, I think Hertz. I just read that Hertz have bought hundreds. I don't know how many. It's like a big chunk of electric cars. So I'm hoping we can rent an electric car rather than a petrol one. Would be very nice.
No, I think the choice would be there for sure.
Yeah.
The EV Expo in Canberra early this year was packed, Robert. So I think
Oh, great.
Fully Charged will be very well subscribed, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah,
Yep.
because I wanted to do our show in Canberra just because I've been there. I spent one night in Canberra and I went, I love Canberra. I want to come back.
Canberra is...
And all the Australians I know who live in Sydney and Melbourne and Brisbane go, why do you want to live in Canberra?
Canberra's changed. It's a good place.
Yeah.
For those who haven't been to Fully Charged Live like myself, what can we expect? You've already mentioned some already. Is there anything different about the Australian edition compared to others you've been to?
I mean, I think the honest answer at the moment is I don't know because we haven't done one yet. But I mean, I think it's going to be more like the shows in the UK is in a big open area outside a city. Effectively, it's not inside. It's basically an airfield with a massive building and a big parking lot in front of it. I think you can park a couple of A380s out the front, so it's got quite a lot of space. So there's a lot of outside space. There's a lot of, as I was saying, the test drives, but there's circuits for electric bicycles and scooters and mono wheels and all that sort of thing, and picnic areas and all that. And I think there will be exterior space at the Sydney venue. But I mean, so that side of it, I'm not sure. I know that we've had to hire an extra hall at the venue because we've already filled one up, which is a really good sign. I'm really thrilled to hear that. So there's a lot of people exhibiting at the hall. We have two sort of sizes of theatre that have been named Mega Theatre and Giga Theatre. And the mega theatres are probably 200 or 300. And usually the Giga Theatre, I mean, in the UK, the Giga Theatre is a couple of thousand people it will accommodate. And that's where we do the talks and the introductory interviews. And that is still being arranged at the moment for Sydney. So I haven't had time yet from now on until I am focusing on who's going to appear. And, there's all sorts of people. We're trying to make sure we can get there. One of the complications that we didn't foresee, as we don't reside there, is we clash with WOMAD in Adelaide, which is really annoying because this is a really very good friend of mine, Simon Hackett, is very involved in WOMAD. And I was desperate for him to come to the Sydney show, and he was too. And he's sent me some direct messages with swearing in them about how angry he is that we've timed it so badly. We just didn't know. So we'll make sure we don't do that again. I mean, they don't really clash in sort of terms other than there's some people I would love to have come who are going to be involved with that. There's, I mean, what's great is the interaction with the exhibitors. So say you've got solar panels, but you're interested in having a battery in your house, there's going to be exhibitors there with the batteries that tell you how you install them, and that stuff, you just walk around the hall and it's buzzing with conversations and information going around. I mean, all the exhibitors we've had just say they're inundated with questions. So things like electric car conversions, converting existing ICE vehicles to electric. There's lots of examples of that, some really good examples of that in Australia, and different models of cars and bikes. I mean, I'm surprised at how much interest there is in the UK outside the cars. I mean, there's huge interest in the cars, but there's such a lot of interest in the house stuff, the domestic stuff. And then when you have we've had the head of the National Grid in the UK on a panel, and you sort of think this is quite esoteric inside baseball, discussions that I've had with these people and interviewed them. But, it's not like, it's kind of quite nerdy. It's packed. It's jam-packed. And I mean, that's who I'm hoping we can get some people who work on the grid in Australia who work in, and also work in mining. I think that's a really important thing, because that's a big thing in Australia. It's a, huge industry in Australia. And there are some, I'm really hoping we can cover it in some ways. There are some mining machinery. I have driven a couple of times. I've operated the biggest hydraulic digger in the world, which was more fun than I'm prepared to admit, and really big mining machines. Just fascinated by the scale of those, the big mining trucks. But they're definitely developing electric versions of those, which work very well. I don't know if you've heard about the one in Switzerland. There's this one that we've been trying to go and see for years. There's a unusual mine in Switzerland because it's up a mountain, so the sort of base of the mining thing is down the bottom of a mountain, and the actual quarry is right up a mountain. So they drive trucks, empty trucks, up this track for hours up to the quarry, fill them up, and then they come down. Well, they've got an electric one that they sort of give it a bit of electricity. It can just about get up. They fill it up with 50 tons of rock, and it regens all the way down, and it charges the batteries to 100%. And they can't use all that power. It doesn't use that much to get up, so they dump that power into the grid. So it's a generator. It's a mining. But the thing is, I've been to quite a lot of mines and quarries. I've never seen one where the trucks go up empty and come down full. They all go down empty and then use huge amounts of energy to haul the rocks up. So it is, a specific quarry. But the fact that is plausible, I think, is fascinating. And I think that, there's sides of the technology that have always intrigued me. And I thought this is a different way of thinking about things to how we've worked with liquid fuels and combustion. It opens up many doors. Sorry, gone off on another tangent.
No,
but you can regen in an aircraft. I think it's really important. When you're coming into land, you're using the air brakes and the propeller to slow you down, and that generates electricity quite a lot.
There you go. Now, question from Gaffer. Will we get a schedule for the talks so our days can be planned in advance?
Yes, definitely. And I'm sure it'll come out quite soon because I know they're feverishly working on this. I mean, I think it's important for me to point out I don't do any of that for very good reason. Because if I did it, if I organized the talks, there would be someone go, I'm doing a talk at 2 on battery recycling, and I'm doing a talk at 2 on the grid. Is there? Like, oh no, sorry. So I don't organize the shows, but I'm talking to the people all the time who do. So yes, there will be a schedule. I'm sure. I mean, it'll definitely be out before Christmas, without doubt. But it may not be until sort of mid-December until we've got all that tied up. I think they're working on it at the moment. I know that, and they're trying to make sure all the people we know we want to come can make it and all that stuff. So that will definitely be there, and there'll be a floor plan with all the people who are exhibiting. And what I don't know at the moment is if we're doing test drives there. I mean, I really hope we are, but I'm not sure about that yet. Someone's going to, when I speak to Dan and the team later, because I've got a meeting with them later on today. What, you didn't tell them about the test drives? I know I will have said something wrong.
We can close the harbour bridge for you, Robert. No problem.
Yeah, please do.
I can tell you that I will be on a couple of the panels on that on
great.
Fully Charged Live, so I'm looking forward to that for sure.
Yeah, no, they've been great fun. I mean, they're hard work when you do a lot. Well, the very first year that we did it, the two problems I had was one was getting to the gentlemen's toiletry facilities was very difficult. And the other one was that I did so many panels that first year that there was a moment, and that it's on, you can see it on camera, where there's a man really interesting, and he was talking about battery chemistry, I think, and new battery designs. But you can see on my face, I have no idea who he is or what he's talking about. I'm so exhausted. So I'm like, I don't know. It's just, so we've had to time it a bit so that I get a little break in between things, because it's, you've really got to be on your game when you do those panels, which I do. I mean, I do that sort of work regularly, but you do one panel, as opposed to 16 in a row, which is harder work.
Oh, it's a long
but they're fascinating. They clearly, I'm fascinated by the people we get on and the information that we get out. It's amazing. That's always been a real thrill.
For sure, for all of us too. Robert, I've got a few news articles I just want to whip through as part of our regular show. If you wouldn't mind, let's comment on a few of these, and then we'll get if those watching in the audience, if you've got any more comments or questions for Robert, please drop them in the comment section. We'll pop them up as we go. All right, so we've got this news article from The Driven. Kempower to deliver more than 50 rapid and ultra-rapid DC chargers to South Australia. So these will be the first Kempower chargers coming to Australia. That's quite a prominent brand in Europe, I imagine, Robert?
It is, and they're really cool-looking chargers. They look amazing. I'm just trying to remember, because I've seen them. We've had them at the show. We've had them on display, and I'm trying to remember whether I've actually used one. I have used one. Just remembered where it was, and it worked. So that's always a big plus. But yeah, they're... yes, I have. I mean, I don't know what speed that was. I can't remember what car I was in and what I was using it for. Yeah, it was a while ago. But yes, it's very, very good news. Very good news.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've had obviously reliability issues with other brands in Australia, so it would be good to get more on standby in Australia for sure. Yeah. Let's look at this one here. So, oil giant BP launches EV charging brand, plans 600 stations across Australia, also from The Driven. Petrol and oil industry doing the same in Europe as well, Robert?
Yeah, I mean, they are, and it's good that they're doing it. It's it's a really difficult one. I think it's difficult for us on sort of ethical grounds when we've been, whenever we do something where we're slightly positive about a big fossil fuel company, we actually lose subscribers. People get really angry about it. But for instance, it depends what you're doing. So Shell in this country and BP have put charges in quite a lot of petrol stations, gas stations around the UK. And in one particular instance in West London, in Fulham in West London, they demolished an existing, and as they described it, profitable petrol filling station. It was only a small one on a corner. It would have been there for for a long time. They've replaced it with, I think it's 13 rapid chargers and a little store and Wi-Fi and solar panels on the roof, and it's incredibly popular. So that when they do that, you go, yeah, go the whole hog, guys, do that. But at the moment, that's the only one. They're talking about doing it elsewhere, but it is the only one. But I've used that thing a couple of times in London. First time just to go and see it. And the second time it was actually, I'm heading down that way. Actually, that's quite useful. I will go via that. And I had to make a tiny detour to go there. It's busy. They have amazing usage. And apparently in the surrounding neighborhood, which is not a poor area of London, it's a very wealthy area of London, but in the surrounding neighborhood, it's like bumper to bumper Taycans and Model X's, because everybody knows they can charge there. If you live in that area. Yeah. But no, I think I want them to do it. I think it's important that they do it. What it does in particular is it shows people who don't know anything about electric cars, aren't interested, and they'll drive in to buy some petrol and they'll see a car charging. They'll go, oh, what's that doing? No, it just raises the profile, I guess.
Mm. We are seeing some funding from the government heading towards all companies, for example, Ampol, BP here in Australia, or New South Wales at least. So, I guess that raises a question whether we should be funding these, but I think it's good for drivers to have more choice, I guess.
Yeah. And I mean, we've got, I'll be critical of the oil industry till the dying day, but, we've also got to live on the same planet. So the more they do, it's just that you've got to be aware of the greenwashing. That's always the worry. And that, and they go, we're investing this much in renewables. And you go, yeah, but you invested $6 trillion exploring for new oil and gas at the same time. So just keep it in perspective. But I'm really pleased they're doing it. I'd much rather they were doing it than they weren't doing it.
That's very true.
Much better.
So next slide I've got is Tesla public supercharging pricing update across Europe. So to give viewers some context, in Australia, it's currently about 68 to 69 Australian cents per kilowatt hour. And I think that translates to about maybe 40 euro cents, something like that.
Yeah, about 40 or 50, 45 maybe euro cents, which is way cheaper than we pay here. But also you've got peak charging tariffs, which they've just brought in Europe. They've been trying out for a while, and literally, I think yesterday or the day before, it spread out across the whole Tesla supercharging network in Europe. And when I say in Europe, I am including the UK. I'm saying Europe geographically.
Yeah, we know what you mean.
Got to be careful. But yeah, so there, which I think is, and that's happening with a lot of our other charging companies as well, are now introducing peak, variable tariffs across the day. So so it's not always as expensive as the most expensive, but our electricity prices have gone off the scale here. It's a hugely complex and difficult topic, but so that is comparing. I'm just seeing what the graphic is. So yeah, you can see, well, 76 pence a kilowatt hour is the equivalent of close to $1 in the UK. It's horrendous.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how our prices rise, whether they do in time to match the rest of the world.
I mean, it is the hardest thing to understand. We've interviewed quite a few people about it already. The actual price of producing electricity from wind, from solar, and from nuclear in the UK has not changed one penny. It hasn't gone up or down or done anything. But the price of this is the one good thing about the whole debacle in this country, is everyone knows it's to do with gas. No one's saying, oh, electricity is expensive because of all your fancy wind turbines. No, it's not. It's because of gas and nothing else. And that's why we're so reliant on gas in this country, particularly for home heating. Yep. It's a huge problem. But yeah, so I mean, I think we're going to be dealing with the fact that driving an electric car isn't hugely cheaper than driving a petrol or diesel car, which it has been for the last 10 years. I mean, like really ridiculously cheaper. But also, as many Australians in particular, it's not hard to work out. You can plug your car in at home, and if you've got solar panels, then electricity is very cheap in your car.
Exactly. Let's have a look at this slide here. So Chris Bowen, our climate change minister or energy minister here in Australia, federal minister, we're starting to develop a national electric vehicle strategy finally, and they're opening submissions. So he says that we've received over 500 submissions on our national electric vehicle strategy, representing over 200 organisations and over 1,500 individuals. So the consultation paper is seeking views on issues including making EVs more affordable, encouraging uptake and choice, increasing charging infrastructure, reducing road transport emissions, introducing fuel efficiency standards, saving Australians money on fuel, and increasing local manufacturing. So I'm happy to see this is finally taking shape.
Yeah, that's such good news. Well, I mean, I'm just, I don't want to comment on Australian politics. I don't know anything about it, but I do remember seeing a certain gentleman holding up a lump of coal in, the move from some doofus holding up coal, which was varnished, by the way. I don't know if you know that. They had to varnish the coal because it's toxic. And if you hold it without gloves on, you get poison on your fingers. Anyway, it's just but to go from that to this is incredibly encouraging. I mean, that's really good that they're taking that seriously. We should try and get Chris Brown to come to Fully Charged Live. Hey, should be on a panel.
That's right. Definitely. I'm sure Chris Bowen will be very interested.
But Chris Bowen, sorry. That's my eyesight and my screen is too, Yeah.
No, the mood has certainly changed in the last 6 months with the change of government. I can assure you.
And I'm sorry, I don't want to go off topic now, but I'm fascinated by the teals. I want to find out more about the teals. I don't know. It was my mother-in-law. Well, Robert, we've got a lot of teals now. Make of that what you will. And that's very cruel that I do an impression of my mother-in-law because she's a lovely woman, but she has got quite a deep voice. That's quite an accurate portrayal.
That's good. We have a segment in our show called EV Charging Eye Candy. That's where we take pictures from around the world of chargers that will hopefully inspire our installers here. So, you talked a bit earlier about a nice charging station with Wi-Fi and panels and amenities, all those kind of things. So this is an example here from Zurich in Switzerland of a nice charging station. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. So
that is amazing. I've never seen anything like it. What a stunning. I now get it. I now get what EV charging eye candy is like.
Yes. It looks like garden hoses almost.
You would be so happy if you drove into that on a long drive at night and you go, where do we charge? Oh, look at those. I want to have a go on those.
Yes, exactly.
That is brilliant. Wow.
And the next segment we have is Spotted. So if we see any interesting EVs, we put them up as well. This one actually belongs to Rahul, who's one of our regulars here. So he posted this on Twitter. This is his Model Y. What do you think of this?
Wow. Because wow, that's amazing. And because I can't tell if that's wrapped. It's been wrapped, hasn't it? I would imagine. And it's got No, it looks very smart.
Is it
Very
been wrapped, Rahul?
impressive.
It is a
What,
wrap.
sorry?
It
Oh,
is a wrap.
Is it?
Yes,
Yeah.
correct. From 3M, and it's called Perfect Satin Blue.
Right. Very nice. Very nice. We went to the Tesla Owners Club UK. I don't know what you call it, where they're all, it was that weird thing where you drive into a field and there's about 700 Teslas, maybe 1,000. It was just a field of Teslas, but on display were some extraordinary modifications that people had done. I don't know if you know about the tradition in the UK of Essex. It's a county just north of London, northeast of London. And there's a kind of tradition of very loud, modified cars with big exhausts and lights underneath them. And it's a bit like low riders in America, only it's often Japanese cars, tinted windows, furry dice, all that stuff. Well, there's a guy from Essex, he was so funny, who's done that to a Model 3. It's got lowered stuff. It's got incredibly bright blue light that comes out from underneath it. It's got an automatic opening and closing frunk. He's modified the screen, which I have to say, sitting in the car, so it's got a yoke steering, and then he's modified the screen so that when you're you're sitting in the car, the screen is there. It's right. He's moved it right up and right in front of the passenger. Can't see it at all, but it's actually really, actually, that's really nice. I can just go, and I went, I want that one. So I appreciate the effort that's gone in. I mean, the wrapping thing is, I'm a bit excited about that. With my lease on my Tesla runs out middle of next year or end of next year, and I was thinking, shall I get another one and wrap it? But I don't know what to wrap it in.
that moved screen sounds like you're in the cockpit of Red Dwarf, maybe.
It was kind of, it made it very spacecrafty. Yes, it was interesting. Yeah.
Now, for our regular viewers, if you are in, I guess the Melbourne event has passed, but in Brisbane and Sydney coming up is the Polestar 6 concept, which is doing its little road trip around Australia. Yeah.
Right.
Have you seen that up close, Robert?
I have. I have, yes, but in their R&D. So I've not driven it or been near it in the. So it was just a static thing at their R&D department. But yeah, it's something we're very excited to test out. Yes, and it's
that one's worth seeing for sure.
Yeah. Oh, that's good. That's very good.
Yeah, it's coming around. Yep. So this is the new Quicksilver color from Giga Berlin for the Model Y. So this might be something you might want to get, Robert, for a new car.
Wow. Yeah. Look at that. Yeah. I've got to say, I'm not a fan of the Model Y. I know it's probably a wicked thing and a sinful thing to say, but when there's loads of them here, and I just think, well, it's like a Model X, only probably cheaper. I think it's probably a better car. I don't know, but it's just a bit too big for me here. I don't know. I'm waiting for whatever the model that's smaller, like the hatchback sized. I just want a smaller car, really. But the Y just feels like it's hugely bigger than the Model 3, and I know it isn't, but it just feels like it's just I think it looks really weird from the back when a Model Y overtakes me, because everyone overtakes me because I'm going for range, not speed. But when I'm following a Model Y, that's just too high. It's just too weird looking. I don't know. So I know that's sacrilege to say that.
No, not at all. Keith Mason asks, Robert, if you could buy or rent one EV for your trip to Australia, what would you go for?
Yeah. Oh, God, it would be tempting. I mean, I probably would go for a Tesla, to be honest. We are looking at how we can wangle it. My sister-in-law has you were actually mentioning it earlier on, and because we don't have them here. What's the BYD?
BYD Atto 3.
Atto 3. Yeah, she has an Atto 3. She's only just got it. So I don't know whether she'll let me blag that. I don't think I dare ask. Margaret, can I have the Atto 3 for a month?
I'm sure we're going to organise
so
one
I
for
don't
you.
know. I would quite like to have something that we can't get here. So something like that, a car that we don't have here at all. I'd love to get a Rivian. Would be great if there was a Rivian. I'll get in touch with Avis Rental, see if they've got any Rivians.
Hertz has got Polestars lying around, actually. They've done a deal. Riz has done a good review on them, haven't you, Riz?
Yeah, so Polestar, you can get them through Hertz. Here in Australia, they launched in August.
Right.
I actually was in Tasmania with one.
Wow.
And just wanted to test the charging network out there. Drove from Devonport to Hobart.
Right.
Had lunch with one of the listeners and audience of this show, Charles
brilliant.
Gregory.
Right.
And then drove back, did 700 odd Ks in that one day in Hertz Polestar back in August. So they've got
Right.
a few. We can get that organized, or I can talk to my friends at BYD and get you in one of those. You won't need to borrow one.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm very happy. I don't want to, I'm very happy to hire one, but no, that's really good to hear that, because I've just done that. I haven't really had time yet. The next few weeks, I will concentrate on trying to sort that out. But no, that's really exciting. Yeah.
I think seeing you in a Atto 3 would be fantastic, Robert. So I'm sure that
I'd
can
love
be
to.
arranged.
Yeah, no, it sounds great. Yeah, yeah. I've just seen that message there. Yeah, no, yeah, very good.
Some more news. So the Tesla semi-delivery event, 1st of December at Giga Nevada. That will be very, very interesting to watch.
Yes. Okay, that will be. Yeah. Wow. Because we've heard all those stories about the charging networks that they're putting out, because they're talking about colossal speeds of charging, haven't they? And yeah, no, I'm really. It is one of those ones because we've just done a lot of stuff about hydrogen fuel cells we've done a lot of stuff about hydrogen, but hydrogen fuel cells for long distance trucking, and it's so interesting. I can't have an opinion because I know people who are completely confident that it's utterly ridiculous and it'll never happen and battery trucks will win. So that's this. And then there's other people who go, it really is happening. There are hydrogen fuel cell trucks in existence and buses in the UK and Europe. But I mean, this does look very impressive. It's great. And it's also fantastic that it's finally happening, because it is, in a sense, it's the Roadster, that truck. It's very difficult to say semi-truck if you're English. It just doesn't make sense.
Semi.
It's a lorry. It's an articulated lorry. But that one, so the Cybertruck, the new Roadster, and the semi, you just think these are all mythical machines that we're never actually going to see. So if one of them comes out, that's very reassuring.
Indeed. Speaking of BYD, so this is some news here from China. They've delivered their 3 millionth new energy vehicle. And this is an article that Riz wrote, actually. So is that deliveries, Riz, or is that production?
The 3 millionth has been produced and delivered. It was a BYD Seal, which I'm sure Elliot will do a review on shortly.
Yeah. Wow.
And yeah, very exciting. And I think it took them 12 years to get to 1 million new energy vehicles. And in the last 18 months, they've gone from 1 million to 3 million.
That's incredible, isn't it? Wow. That's kind of says, I mean, bizarrely, if you look at our view, I'm not trying to compare what we do with BYD, but if you look at our viewing figures, there's a sort of real correlation there. It took me 2 years to get 1 million aggregated views, and we're over 1 million views a week. So that's the curve, and that is extraordinary, isn't it? Because I remember seeing BYD cars at the Geneva Motor Show, I think in 2009, and someone said, "Oh, you've got to go and see these. These are the Chinese ones." And I looked at them and went, "Oh God, they don't look very safe. They look a bit wobbly. They just didn't. I wasn't impressed. They didn't look very well made. The design was lumpy and it just looked awkward in comparison with these incredibly sleek European. There was Audis and BMWs and Porsches, and they looked amazing. I mean, not electric, but the styling and the sophistication of them was, and the Chinese one. And now you look, that is flipped on its head. You now look at the Chinese cars and go, oh my God, they're better made. They're easily as good, if not better made than stuff in Europe, So it's an incredible journey. When you think that 20 years ago, BYD made batteries for phones. That was what they were doing. They didn't make cars, did they? I mean, that's an amazing success story.
And we
Terrifying,
know
really, isn't it? For North American and European car makers, it's got to be I think they are aware of that.
And we now know Tesla's looking at the Blade battery for its own batteries as well. So, yeah. Well, look, Robert, before we let you go, I just want to look at today's poll, which I've got as, will you be attending Fully Charged Live Australia in March 2023? We've got 164 respondents, and 70% of people have actually said either yes or maybe. So that is a vote of confidence, surely, for Fully Charged
Very,
Live.
very nice to hear. Thank you very much. Oh, well, that's very good. No, hopefully it will be worth the visit. I think. No, I'm not even going to say hopefully. I know it'll be worth the visit, but hopefully a lot of people come. I mean, it feels quite optimistic at the moment. I'm trying to be more optimistic about it. I'm always the one who's the most worried, about its success. But I think, it's going to be, if you're interested in anything around that. And I think particularly one of the interesting things we've seen is families and kids going to it, which was a thing I didn't expect. I think there was a side of me that was worried that if we did before we did the very first show, that it would just be full of quite grumpy men my age, who've got a leaf and they just want to moan about the charging infrastructure, and the range. That was just go. I don't want to, and nothing to, not to denigrate men my age. Some of us are lovely, but I thought that might be it, and actually. The experience is that there's way more women there attend than watch the show. So we're a very male-oriented audience. There's nothing, we've tried very hard. We've got better. There's slightly more women watch Fully Charged now than used to, but it's still a very small percentage. But at those shows, there's women there, and they're not just bored, miserable, hanging around with their husbands. They're with their families, with kids, and there's a lot going on. And they, when we do a talk about home energy, I would say it's half and half. It's a huge amount of women are really interested in that side of things, I think, which is really encouraging. So that's my hard sell. I'm not very good at selling it, but we really hope that some people will come along. There's certainly a lot of stuff to see. There's no question of that. We know that already, and I'm sure there'll be a lot more.
I can certainly vouch for that. For the EV events I've been to this year alone, I agree with you. There's been 50-50 almost with men and women and children and families attending. It's very inclusive these days.
Yeah. No, and it's a lovely atmosphere. It is. I think we're still at a stage where there is a sort of community around electric vehicles, which is generally very supportive and nice and kind and inclusive and non-abrasive, which is lovely. I mean, that may change as electric cars just become cars. I'm really hoping I live long enough to see electric cars become cars and electric planes become planes. That would be good.
Yeah, for sure. And don't forget to use my coupon code, everyone, LUDFCLAU10, 10% off tickets. It will definitely be worth it, as Robert has said. And before we let Robert go tonight, just want to let everyone know that next 2 weeks we've got Larissa Mirabelli, who is the head of PR and communications from Polestar Australia, joining us next week. Looking forward to that one. And then on the 1st of December, we've got James Downs from Eon Charge, who installs EV chargers in Victoria. So we might do an anatomy of public EV charging infrastructure. I think that would be very interesting for everyone to see how that is done. And of course, I want to thank also our partners and sponsors for tonight, Whyalla Han Show and EVSE. So make sure you check out those in the video description below. Robert Llewellyn, I just want to thank you once again on behalf of myself, Rahul and Riz, and all our viewers tonight. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on board. And again, having Crichton on the show, I just still cannot believe it. He's right here. And thank you for enlightening us on all things EVs and renewables tonight.
Well, thank you so much for having me. No, it's been a real joy. And I'm very much looking forward to coming to Australia again.
Indeed, and we're very much looking forward to hosting you as well.
Yeah, I'll see you there. No, great stuff. All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, Robert, and take care, everyone. Until next episode, happy charging. See you soon.